Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you so much for joining me here. Happy Friday to you. I'm really excited to be able to go ahead and talk about this analysis here today, not because we're dumping to the downside and we expected it, mostly because I think there's some absolutely awesome stuff going on the back end that we need to recognize. There's also some big picture stuff here with Elliott Wave we need to recognize too that I think is very important to understand, just so you understand, kind of big picture where we're going here. Yes, we're going down, but we got a lot of support in the 25,000 range, and more important, we have a lot of back-end data I think that's going to be super relevant to understand here too. Okay, so if you're new to the channel, I love teaching people to trade. I hope you can learn something here today. Really simple and straightforward. Go to our Twitter, of course, help us grow the community. Greatly appreciate that. Like, follow, retweet our messages there. Help us get that growing because this is kind of in the earlier stages, if you will. And I can tell you that it's really a lot of fun, great way to interact with our community. So thank you again so much to all of our community members who have been supporting us there. Greatly appreciate that. And obviously like, follow, and subscribe to YouTube if you haven't already. I think you probably have, considering the fact that you're watching this. You've probably been watching for a while. Thank you very much for that, by the way. So, okay, let's enough of that. What we want to do is look at some back-end stuff. We'll look at some other charts to kind of see different gaps that are starting to occur, as well as simply put what is the big picture here for Bitcoin when it comes to Elliott Wave and essentially where we could go next, because we are printing some lower lows right now, and as we continue to go lower, we increase the odds of the price action going higher. Okay, so cool stuff there. So that said, let's go ahead and jump on over to High Block Capital and kind of see what's going on here first and work our way down. All right, so big picture, we can see that the price has gone down for 7 days straight. Okay, that does give us some reprieve here soon, because according to TD Sequential, we should only be going down for a little bit longer. We've got maybe 2 or 3 more days of red. Okay, that's a positive sign. We're getting close to this cycle down. Obviously, Elliott Wave ties into that. We'll touch on that in a moment. But what's important, I think, here to recognize is the fact that we have a lot more bids than asks. Specifically today, we got a tremendous amount of buying pressure. Okay, so you got to recognize the 25 to 26,000 range is a strong zone where people feel it's a good value. Our average true range right now is in that range, and it really helps us understand that we could have that shift in momentum where the price action will turn itself around soon. I think that's very likely. So I've been adding to my position every $500 down for Bitcoin, just keeping it even 27, 26.5, 26 even, and essentially getting my positions filled on the way down. I like that personally. That's just kind of the dollar cost average kind of person that I am. I like to add to my position in the long run. But again, different strokes for different folks. If you're shorting, there's nothing wrong with that. I think we could see further downside. I'll talk about that too. But what we want to recognize here, the elephant in the room, or more so the whale in the room, is that we have a lot of pressure here from whales buying and selling today. So the fact that today's price action is roughly the same as where it started, again, roughly is the key takeaway here, because Asian markets dumped pretty hard last night. We can see that whales are coming in trying to add to their position at this level. That's a very good sign. We can also see here that there are more long positions closing their position. Okay, so longs are concerned about taking a long position right now because there's a lot of selling pressure. Okay, so we can see that actually on the bid-ask spread ratio, but more importantly, what we can see that on is the open interest. So let's take a look at this here. Net longs are effectively breaking even. They're mostly averaged out between 26.2 and 26.4, so nothing tremendously important there. When it comes to shorts, we can see that they're also roughly at the same level. Okay, so we kind of see this battle between good and evil. Not saying bears are evil, but just saying this battle for Middle Earth right now, right? Where 26.3 is a point of contention. So what we can see on the charts too, and we'll look at this here in a moment, there is a definitive resistance level on our candlestick closure from yesterday, and I'll talk about that too, but there's a lot of reasons why it's best not to just jump into a long position, but it is also advantageous to consider adding to your position for the long-term big picture, because once again, 5, 10, 15 years down the road, we're going to feel that 26,300 is an insanely good deal. Okay, even 30,000 will be a good deal by that time, right? Because again, supply and demand, Bitcoin is almost fully mined, right? We're getting to that point, another year or two, I think we're there. Anyways, good stuff there, big picture. I think the big picture, we're looking good. Let's talk a little bit about the other big pictures here too, and see if there's any specific gaps on CME here as well. We can see this gap's gotten filled. This one was mostly filled, partially filled. This is still going to be something we want to pay attention to there. And again, I like marking these things because these things inevitably get filled in the long run. Okay, I think I got the color a little off on that one. Let's make that a little more forgiving. But generally speaking, there's 2 gaps above us here. One at about 27,700, and the other between the range of about 29 and 29.7. So those will inevitably get filled, okay? So just keep in mind, it's not a guarantee it's just going to turn itself around right now, but there's a great likelihood those will get filled in the relative near future. Again, just something to pay attention to. Not a reason to take a trade, but it absolutely does help to understand that. We can see Bitcoin dominance is coming down. This is interesting. And Bitcoin dominance is coming down. It really just tells us that there's more money coming out of Bitcoin than going into it. Okay. Now, typically what's supposed to happen is when we drop below this range, altcoins are supposed to start surging. We look at altcoins here today, and we are in the green. Okay, this is not a surge by any stretch, but it is up by a small margin there, roughly 1%, and that's a pretty big deal across the board. We see some green and some red today, not just all red. Yesterday was a sea of red, and it was disgusting. Okay, we'll look at the Asian markets and how they impacted it as well, but generally speaking, for right now, that's roughly where we're at there. So that's a big picture outlook to just kind of help us understand there's a shift in momentum here, where Bitcoin dominance is coming down. That's a positive sign in the big picture because alts can flourish. Because what happens is money comes from Bitcoin, the profits come from Bitcoin that goes into altcoins while they're low. Altcoins can increase once Bitcoin finds its bottom, then alts will tend to increase significantly. Right now they're just kind of preparing for the storm, if you will. But there's no doubt. Price of Bitcoin goes down by 1%, alts 2 to 3%, no question about it. Okay, so going long on altcoins right now, unless you have tight profit targets, is not really the best call. We took some healthy profits on Gala last night. It was nice because it was actually having an inverse pattern. It was going up while Bitcoin was going down. So we took some profits there, but again, that's a different story. We're in and out within a few minutes. Okay, that said, looking at the daily here, let's go ahead and look at the kind of standard routine stuff here. First of all, we're getting overextended on the stochastic RSI. That's a first sign that you want to look at to kind of preemptively anticipate potential increase. If you look here, anytime the price has increased and recovered from Bitcoin, you can see that it's always prefaced by a convergence on the RSI. Okay, so keep that in mind. It's not always a convergence on the MACD. MACD is a bit slower moving averages, and it just works different in general. So it's important to recognize that while we are diverging right now, there's a good chance we will converge in the relative near future. Okay, so that's a good sign. That doesn't necessarily mean the price is just going to shoot up, but it does help us understand we're getting closer to that bottom, that overextended state based on the relative strength. And as we can see here, the RSI right now is trending about 35, which means we have potential for further downside, but we also have good, strong potential for a bounce. Because if you look at Bitcoin's history, anytime we've seen 30 on the RSI, the price inevitably did some pretty awesome things. Okay, not saying it's going to do the exact same thing, but there's a great chance we will see something just like this, right? So roll with me here on this one. Take a look at this. Let's do this here. Let's take a look at the Elliott wave now, so you can kind of see that kind of looks like a pattern that we might see continue higher, right? Now I know these are just some scribbles on a chart, but generally speaking, when you look at this here, you can kind of tell that the price action wants to continue higher from here. And what I mean by that is Elliott wave has a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pattern. 3 higher highs and 2 higher lows. Okay, so we can see so far in this wave, we've got a higher high and a second higher high. Our third higher high is still yet to be discovered. Okay, so that's cool, that's awesome. It doesn't do anything for us now because the price is still going down. But the key takeaway here is that once we find our bottom, which would make sense to establish our bottom at the support range where all the moving averages are converging or effectively just kind of averaging themselves out, it's a great chance we're going to see a bounce there. And if so, we will likely see a price point of somewhere in the range of 35 to 40,000, possibly even higher. Again, this is big picture, longer term stuff. This is not going to happen tomorrow, but this is absolutely something that typically does happen because Elliott wave continues to occur frequently in Bitcoin's history. Okay, so just know that we are essentially due for one more leg up before we have a retracement, and it could very well land us in the 35 to 50,000 range based on Fibonacci retracement levels. Okay, just again some big picture stuff. So I'm not saying to go long right now 100x and just forget about it. No way, but in truth, we're getting close to the bottom. A good place in which you want to consider adding to your position would be that 25,300 range. Between 24.5 and 25.3 essentially is that range. Okay. So anyways, just some future stuff there. But as for right now, what we're looking at here, we still have room for further downside. Just because stochastic is kind of converging, for lack of better terms, doesn't mean it's going to just bounce right now. I will say, though, if we come closer to 30 on the RSI, there's a good chance we'll see at least some sideways action followed by a leg up, if not a very strong recovery like we saw here recently. Okay, so keep in mind that could very well happen. So the daily looks pretty good. Very last thing I want to summarize with on the daily is the simple moving averages here. And just recognize that we got the 200-day SMA working its way up about 22,000, but we are underneath some resistance levels. It's averaging out at the 0.236 Fibonacci retracement level, 28,300. So 28,300 is going to be a resistance level for us if we were to try to retest that range based on the moving averages converging there at that point. Or correction, they're actually diverging with the 20 or intersecting with the 50 in a downward fashion. That said, let's go ahead and look at the 4-hour here. Keep in mind, this is just a previous anticipation. I send these out on Twitter pretty much daily. That's why it's probably important for you to enable notifications and be aware of that. But simply put, I send out potential play out charts, and I still feel like we're going to see a bounce off this level. It may not go any lower, but it should. It would make sense if it does. And here's why. Actually, I forgot, I kind of just skimmed over this here. If you look at TD sequential, we're at a 6 on TD sequential, and really just for the most part, anytime you see a 9 on TDS, it'll typically go sideways or reverse. In other words, we saw a 9 here, price goes sideways. We saw an 8 here, price goes down. Inverse should apply as well. Once we see the 9er, which could put us right here by Monday, we'll likely be able to see the price go up or sideways. Okay, those are two possible scenarios. All right, just a heads up on that. Now, taking a look at the 4-hour, is another reason why this could be the tentative bottom. We're at a 9 on TD sequential, and what we saw here previously when we hit a 9 on TDS in the 4-hour, price went sideways. We got duped out by the federal government. They sold a lot of Bitcoin, roughly $250 million in Bitcoin. The price comes down to now where we're at here. Keep in mind, it wasn't just that one thing, but that was a fundamental type of catalyst because, again, CPI data comes out. All right, people are excited. It's lower than we thought. Nope, sorry, federal government steps in and a bunch of whales tank the market, and now we're sitting right here with our thumbs in the air, right? It's an interesting thing, but what I'm getting at is that we're at a 9 on TDS, a second 9 after a brief period of consolidation. There's a good chance we're going to go sideways, then down before we leg up, or just sideways and then up from here. This could tentatively be the bottom, but it doesn't make a ton of sense because there's not a lot of support here based on volume, so we need to build a volume profile at this range. That said, we're trending closer to 30 on the RSI, which is notoriously a good bouncing point. So if you look at Bitcoin's history, when we come close to 30, if not lower, good things will happen inevitably when the price action continues higher to break 50 on the RSI. So I'm looking for a closure above 50 on the RSI to feel any sort of comfort in taking a long position with Bitcoin at this point. While we still have a long-term, swing trade open with our community with Bitcoin, that's a big picture one. That was a small position size. That is not a big deal. So try not to worry about that or overthink that if you're a community member. The important thing is that we focus on what's going on right now, and the truth is that we are overextended to the downside. We're due for a correction, but we're not quite there yet. Our convergence on the MACD hasn't happened yet, and we're just looking at a position where we could continuously swing upwards, but we're not going to be there yet. All right. That is kind of where we're at there for Bitcoin. Other than that, what we're going to look at is the hourly, and then we'll just take a quick look at the the market closures and kind of go from there. So on the hourly, we can kind of see here, big surprise, fairly overextended to the downside. We hit an 8 there, going sideways. Not a lot to really note except for the fact that we're well below the cloud. Another reason not to take a long position, you can see that this downtrend here, we are absolutely getting hammered anytime the price goes into the cloud. So I'm waiting for a firm closure above the cloud and the cloud's below the price action. At that point, once we've consolidated nicely above the cloud, that's when I'd feel more comfortable. But just know that the cloud will continue to average itself out lower as the price comes down. This does tell us to leave our short position open if you have one, but you got to recognize that we've been pushing down for some time, and I would say the bottom is getting close. Probably another 3 or 4% correction from Bitcoin. We'll see a recovery and a stabilization. But the long story short here is if you have a short open, it wouldn't be terrible to keep it open until we get confirmation. Because at this point, we got roughly about, 6-7 more hours before the price action intersects there. Coincidentally, we have roughly, about 5 hours left in our trading period here. So let's take a look here really quick. Probably a little easier to see on the 15-minute. We've got, we're roughly halfway through our trading day here for traditional markets. So that being said, when we look at the current market where we're at, it's a situation where we want to make sure to note that it's pretty consistent here. We can see Asian markets kind of push the price action down, right? That's a huge, huge selling candle right before the candlestick closure there. And then, of course, New York markets are also doing terrible as well, or just US. So for lack of better terms, when we look at these things here, it is absolutely something to recognize that specific timeframes are important to stay out of the market. Okay, so I would say ultimately when it comes to late in the night, late in the evening, essentially for us here in the US, it's definitely something to pay attention to as far as Asian markets. I'll actually review this a little bit more specifically in the future. I just want to touch on the fact that we did have some pretty strong selling pressure late last night. It was fairly unnecessary, but it pushed us down below that support level at 26.6, and now that's a resistance. Okay. All right. I think that's everything. I'm done. I've talked way too much here. I hope you appreciate it. And if you do, comment below, like, subscribe, the whole 9 yards. Greatly appreciate all of our current community members and future ones as well. Just know we got day trades coming in the community. Also got an awesome exchange I'm working with right now. We're building a partnership as we speak. Should have that available the next couple of days for for our U.S. market. There's going to be a significant bonus for not only deposit, but no deposit is required, and all you gotta do is use my registration link, and we're gonna have auto trading enabled through that. Okay. Again, more information to come, but I'm super excited about this. This is gonna be a really cool game changer for a lot of our U.S. residents. So I got you covered, guys. We're working hard to get a good solution for you. Thanks again for joining me here. Hope you have a great rest of the day. We'll see you the next one. Take care.